Hey guys, we need to look at the open-ended response for question 3 in AP Literature. This is a response where you get to choose the work that you write about. Question 3, or the open-ended response, requires you to choose a novel or play of your own choice and write an essay that presents the main idea in relation to the overall meaning of the work. Now, when it comes to choosing the novel or the play, stick to novels and plays. Do not, it may say drama, by the way, do not use short stories, do not use poetry unless it says epic poetry, and then of course it has to be an epic poem. And make sure that you are choosing something of literary merit, which probably means something that you have read in pre-AP 10, AP Lang, AP Lit, or perhaps ninth grade, To Kill a Mockingbird or something of that nature. You always have to identify what the prompt is asking you to do, and then think about the works you're most familiar with that you would choose to write about and make sure they pair up in order to answer the question adequately. Here's a sample prompt. Remember, AP means answer the prompt. So what is the prompt asking me to do? In some works of literature, childhood and adolescence are portrayed as times graced by innocence and a sense of wonder. In other works, they are depicted as times of tribulation and terror. Focusing on a single novel or play, explain how its representation of childhood or adolescence shapes the meaning of the work as a whole. Now think about what this prompt is asking you to do. It gives you this contextual information. You need to pick a work that focuses on childhood and adolescence as they are portrayed as times of innocence and wonder, but maybe as times of tribulation and terror. It's either or, not necessarily both. Also, remember, you're going to write about a single novel or play. So a novel or a drama, one, you're not going to bounce about between works. You're going to avoid short stories, avoid poetry, unless the prompt actually says epic poem. And then you have to think about how, not focusing on that one novel or play, explain how its representation of childhood or adolescence shapes the meaning of the work as a whole. So what is the big idea of the work, and how does that representation of childhood or adolescence contribute to your understanding of that? Now, when we think about that, as I've said, do not use poetry, short stories, etc. You must use a novel or play. Sometimes a prompt might say an epic poem, and sometimes it may say drama instead of play. They will give you a list of titles. You can scan the list of titles if you want, but you do not have to use a title off of the list. I consider the list to be just if you're stuck and you can't think of a title on your own, then you could go to the list and hope something would spark your creativity. And you can list any others that you have read as long as it's an appropriate novel of literary merit. Again, something from probably use in class grades 9 through 12. So in this prompt, it asks us, what is the relation between innocence, sense of wonder, times of tribulations, and terror as far as childhood? Think about the books you've read that focus on this. For instance, I think I'm going to use To Kill a Mockingbird today because most of you have read it, but you may have others that jump out as well. What happens to innocence as a result of the realities of times of tribulation or terror? How does childhood innocence change as a result of those things? Think about Scout and what she witnesses happening in her town and how she changed as a result of being a sheltered child and then witnessing the injustice that happened in her community. So think about, okay, what's the big idea of the work? There will be more than one. A full-length novel or drama will always have multiple levels of theme. And so you're going to pick one. Also be aware there's no right answer here. You may choose one theme to talk about and your friend may choose a different one. Does not matter. So think about, okay, for me, what was the takeaway big idea of the work? In my case, I'm going to think about To Kill a Mockingbird. What are some of those broad universal meanings from literature that relate to this prompt? What are the life lessons that could be pulled out of the novel and the prompt I'm writing about? What concrete examples can I pull out of my chosen novel or drama to answer the prompt? So when I'm thinking about To Kill a Mockingbird, what are the concrete examples I could pull out of that book to put into the commentary I'm going to write in my essay? Here's a possible theme for To Kill a Mockingbird based on this prompt. In her revealing novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee contrasts the almost idyllic life of Scout and Jim with harsh reality of the world that surrounds them. While their father, Atticus, loves and protects them, he does not shield them from the broken family of their friend Dill or the unjust trial, conviction, and death of Tom Robinson. You have the title, To Kill a Mockingbird. You have the author, Harper Lee. You have genre, the novel. You go to tone with words like idyllic, harsh reality, that contrasting tone, because this is a prompt that focuses on contrast. And you then go to this big idea or theme. And isn't it true that we all have to face the reality of the world that surrounds us? So how do we think this is going to be used thematically in this novel? Another possible theme for introduction could be this one. Harper Lee's nostalgic novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, approaches the question of whether people are essentially good or evil, as seen through the innocent eyes of Jim and Scout Finch, as they confront the evils of hatred and racism in their small town of Macomb, Alabama. And you notice both of these introductory sentences focus just on the work at hand. We're not necessarily going out to that big universal idea. Right now, we're focused on the novel at hand. We have, again, the title, To Kill a Mockingbird, the author, Harper Lee, the genre, novel. We have tone words like nostalgic, good, and evil. And then we have this big idea, the question of whether people are essentially good or evil, and of course seen through the eyes of Jim and Scout Finch, since we had to focus on childhood with this prompt. Once we had settled on our big idea and the approach we were going to take, then in the body of the essay, we would focus on what happened in this particular novel to back up our big idea. Okay, if we're approaching the question of whether people are good or evil as seen through the innocent eyes of these children, then we had to pull examples out of the novel that focus on the hatred and racism they witnessed in their own community. When we come to a conclusion for open-ended, we're going to go with that big universal statement. As children move from innocence to adulthood, they must learn the moral lesson that most people have the capacity for good and for evil, and that the most important lessons are about treating others with sympathy and understanding, and not losing hope or becoming cynical. And here we've moved from that narrow paragraph in the beginning that focused on the work at hand to a much broader paragraph at the end that focuses on a bigger idea that could apply to anybody, anytime, any place, no matter what. Because isn't it true that we inherently must move from innocence to adulthood? And all of us do that through learning lessons. And one of the hard lessons we have to learn is that there is good and evil in the world. And we have to learn how to cope with that. As we approach open-ended, I want you to think about that. What's the big idea I can pull out of the works we read, and then be able to talk about it from narrow, focused on the work at hand, to broad, with a universal statement that it could apply to anybody at any time. Thanks a lot.